All right, we are going to get going here. And I think I'm just checking my stuff here. It looks like we are starting up on YouTube. And we'll let this get started, and then I'll kick on the Amazon thing in about 5 minutes or so as we get going here. So if you are curious as to what I'm doing tonight, we are streaming live on Amazon in addition to us being on YouTube. And tonight I'm going to be shooting a video on my experiences so far running in a 2-switch household. And this has proven to be a bit challenging, and I'm going to do a kind of an explainer so that I think consumers need to be aware of this, because you're seeing these new portable switches. This is the Switch Lite. I got this for my wife around the Christmas season, and the intent here was to get this device and have this kind of supplement the other Switch, because if the kids wanted to play something, they could play maybe handheld on this one. And this one can stay home or whatever. So the problem, though, is that I have a bunch of digital games that I bought on my existing Switch that I've had for the last 3 years or so. And what ended up happening is that it's not really easy to have a large digital library with more than one Switch. So we're going to explore this topic a bit tonight and see what we can come up with here. So that is the overall game plan for this evening. And this is going to be on Amazon, because I've been doing the Amazon live streaming. So what will happen here is that this stream on YouTube will also be going to Amazon's live thing. And it will also be on the Amazon homepage from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. this evening. So that is the reason why we're doing this later than I typically do these streams. And it looks like the YouTube thing, usually I get more viewers in here. I've got one person watching right now. I wonder if maybe the count is off. So if you are on YouTube, please say hi in the chat so I can make sure this is working properly. This is being done mostly for the Amazon side of things. So as long as we're okay on Amazon, I think we're going to be okay. So I'm going to start the Amazon stream in about 3 minutes. And that way they'll have me running for when the 8 o'clock hour comes along here. So if you're just tuning in, the one of you that's watching, what we're going to be doing tonight is a look at how to live in a 2-switch household, because it is extremely challenging, I think, to be in a 2-switch household if you have digital games. And that, again, is what we're going to be exploring on tonight's live stream. So that is the game plan. So we're just going to kind of dilly-daddle, whatever the word is, here until we hit the 8 o'clock hour, which is when we go live on the Amazon homepage. So that's why I'm just kind of futzing around here. And we can take a look at some different camera views we'll have. So we'll have a 2 up here, so we can kind of demo what happens when you try to load a digital game on your host Switch and then go to the other one, and all that good stuff. So that is one view we'll have. And then, of course, we'll have me, and then I've got my view here. And then if we want, we can just go straight up to this. This one looks like it's angled downward a little bit, and that's just because of how it sits on the table. So if we switch over here, you can see it kind of sits at an angle. And there's no kickstand on this one like there is on the other one. So that is that. Odd, though, that nobody on YouTube is tuning in. Usually we get at least like 30 or 40 at this point when we're on YouTube. So I wonder if something's not right here, as it should be fully accessible. Let me check my channel real quick and see what's going on here. And if you are in the YouTube thing, definitely say hello on the chat so I know that you're watching. Hi, it's Lon.TV, and every couple of days I come down here to my basement television studio to review a new gadget or device that gets sent my way. Everything from computers to video production hardware, cameras, video games, even retro gaming hardware. I get it all. I take a few minutes to look at the product, play with the product, show you how it works, and that'll maybe help you decide whether or not it's something that's right for you. So hit that subscribe button, and every couple of days you'll get a great short new video delivered to you free of charge. Thanks again, and I hope to see you in my subscription list. I wonder if, you know what, I bet you that's what's going on here. privacy was set to unlisted, and I wonder if that is why. So let's see what happens here now. That was weird because I don't think I made that change consciously, but perhaps that was the problem. So let's see what happens here. And we'll kick on the Amazon stream shortly. I am not sure. It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. I want to have some people from YouTube watching too. So let me recycle the stream here and see if maybe that will fix it. So let's do that. Oh, there we go. Now we're getting some people in here. Adrian is here. Hello. And so for those of you just tuning in, what we're doing tonight is another one of these Amazon live streams. And I've been encountering some challenges in dealing with having multiple Switch consoles. So I got, for my wife for Christmas, I got her a Switch Lite. And the plan with this was that she would play some of her games on it. She likes to play the NES games and stuff. And then we would also have this available for the kids to play with so that they could have their own thing for the plane or whatever if we're going somewhere. And unfortunately, it's been kind of a nightmare to manage this. So this has been kind of the bane of my existence. So I have prepared this much stuff to go through for the stream tonight. So this is what we're going to do. So, and I for some reason, I must have had the stream on YouTube initially set at unlisted. So I was talking to myself for a little bit. But now it looks like there's at least 5 of you here, so that's good. And then we'll kick on the stream also on Amazon too. And Adrian's saying he had a 3DS and had a similar issue with his 3DS. Yeah, I think this is like one of these things that Nintendo's got to improve. And I was somewhat aware of it. I've now done this twice. I've bought stuff without like researching things properly. So now I'm gonna share with you my pain in doing that. I'm just gonna go kick on the Amazon stream now, and we'll get that going. And I think we are live on Amazon. So hello everyone on Amazon as well. We're gonna be on the Amazon homepage in about 8 minutes. So we're gonna start the stream once we get to that 8 o'clock hour, because that's when they'll be promoting the stream on the homepage. So that's pretty exciting. And we'll take a look at that when it kicks on. So it looks like a couple of you are in. The YouTube thing's really weird tonight. I'm not sure what's going on. But if you are watching on YouTube, like I mentioned, we're going to be looking at living in a multi-switch household. So that's the topic for tonight. And I'll be recording a video doing this. So that is the deal. Yeah, so Zam is right. The online infrastructure is kind of messy right now. There's really no synchronization of your stuff, so you're kind of having to manage that backup process. We'll kind of touch on that a little bit on my very long outline of all the things that you need to do. So we'll figure it all out. And we're going to be kind of just we have this hand signal in the business. This means to stretch it out. So what we're doing is we're going to start in earnest at 8 o'clock Eastern time, because that's when the Amazon homepage thing will kick in. And my YouTube viewership count is like totally off, so I have no idea how many people are actually watching. Let me just answer a couple of, okay, 14 now. I think now it's maybe catching up. So what happened was when I started the YouTube stream, I had it on unlisted, and that didn't work well, obviously, because the only person watching was me. So now it looks like a few of you have found me, which is good. So let's see. New York, Hamid83 says, Xbox does it best, automatically syncing between multiple consoles. Which PS4 and Nintendo did this? Yeah, you can kind of sync stuff with the backup thing, but it's not perfect by any stretch. Richard Mullane wants to know if I'm still using the ATEM Mini. I have it kind of as a backup device. I'm definitely going to hang on to that one because it's useful. Especially if I want to do some additional streaming in places other than home. So I'm going to definitely be using it a little bit here and there. Andreas from Greece, welcome. It's got to be late there. I would guess it's probably, what, about like, because it's about almost 8 o'clock here. So in Greece, I'm going to say it's like 2 a.m. You might be up late there, so thank you for tuning in. Adrian says, all this does is not make me want to buy a light model. That's part of it too. It's like, oh, I just love it. It's just the form factor is so great on this thing. But it's very difficult to have two of these things. And I was hoping to get two because then my kids could play their games on here. And the problem is that, and we're going to talk about this when we hit 8 o'clock, when we get started. The problem is that I have bought a couple of games for the kids digitally on this one, and I can load them on here digitally. But if I do anything on this Switch, it like cuts off the other one. So I'll show you how all that works out. 3 a.m. Andreas. So thank you for staying up late. Dennis, your clock is not slow. What I'm doing here is, as I just was doing my little hand signal here, I'm kind of stretching things out because I wanted to get the stream going, first of all, so we can get some people in. And then Amazon will have us on the homepage beginning at 8 o'clock. So once we hit that 8 o'clock moment in about 4 minutes, I will then begin the mainline topic here. I'm just refreshing the page to see if I'm on here yet, but I'm not yet. So what will happen is if you go over to Amazon.com, and you can click on the link on the description, it'll take you into the live stream. But they're going to be putting it on the homepage of Amazon too for customers that buy technology products, I think is the plan here. So Richard Mullane, it's almost 1 a.m. in Ireland. Thank you also for staying up late. I was in Ireland very briefly when I went to Berlin. I stopped over in Dublin on my way over there. Flood of Sin said that YouTube didn't notify him of the live stream. Yeah, you know what happened is that I did not, for some reason the thing was set to unlisted. So that is probably why it didn't push out notifications. But it looks like about 28 of you have found it. So I don't know how it's putting that up for people. And maybe that notification will come a little bit later. 32 are in now. I think it's starting to get it out there. ZM says he wishes the light model was dockable. Yeah, that's a big reason to maybe not consider this too. I really like even though it feels a little loose now, it's getting a little bit loose with my Joy-Cons here. I do like the way the Switch kind of works for me. I've been. What's funny is, I had bought an Xbox One back in 2010, and I barely used it. The 360 I was really into, and the Switch I'm using as much as my 360. I'm really enjoying the console, and my kids are starting to play with me too. So the Nintendo games are really good for kids as far as some of the games are just fun. So my daughter and I we completed Luigi's Mansion together. And they've got a great co-op mode that she can, play like this green. They call him Gooigi. He's like this gooey stuff, and he's like a Luigi that just comes out of the vacuum cleaner thing, and she can help play the game. It was great because it wasn't hard for her. She's 6. It wasn't hard for her, and she was able to contribute to the game. It was a lot of fun playing that game through with her, and we would play every night. We would get a little bit further in the game. And now we're looking for some other stuff to play. So we've been playing Mario Kart lately too, and we've been having fun with that. So that has been good. And in case you're wondering, I'm just kind of stalling a little bit because we're going to be on the Amazon homepage starting around 8 o'clock. So in about 2 minutes, we'll get my whole big outline here going. So I spent about an hour and a half today just like putting all these bullets together just to try to figure out how to explain this. And what we'll be doing tonight is I'll be making a video here. So this will be recorded, and then I'll upload it as a regular video later in the week. Asgard wants to know about the heat on the light. I haven't used the light all that much, so I can't really comment on the heat yet. I haven't really noticed it being all that hot. And I think, too, people get a bit susceptible or concerned about heat perhaps when they shouldn't be concerned about it, because a lot of times things are designed to run at a certain temperature. Even though it might be warm, it might not be damaging. So, okay, so Zam says, yeah, so the stream is on Amazon right now, and I don't know if it's on the homepage yet, but we're pretty much at 8 o'clock, so we're gonna get going here and get the ball rolling. So the Amazon stream is up, but just the homepage embed is not yet running until 8 o'clock. But we're like 30 seconds out here, so I think we'll be kicking this off very shortly. So what I'm going to do here is kind of start off on the 2 consoles for the intro, and then people browsing Amazon will just kind of come across the stream as we're going here. And I'm experimenting with different types of streams to see like what works for folks. And I like this idea of having something topical. because I think it makes it more valuable to the viewership to have a topic that we can kind of focus around. All right, so we are at the 8 o'clock hour, so we're going to get things going here. And I want to, first of all, welcome everybody who's tuning in. We are simulcasting here on Amazon as well as on YouTube. And what we'll be doing tonight is looking at the Nintendo Switch, and specifically how we can manage having two Switches at the same time in a household. And this has often been a challenging thing. And here's what happened here. I bought the Switch Lite from my wife for the holidays and for the kids to use. And what ended up happening here is that the Switch Lite doesn't play well with another Switch in the household. And I wanted to kind of run through some scenarios here for how to address these things. Miguel Hernandez is saying hello on the Amazon chat. And what we're going to be doing tonight is, as I'm doing this live stream, we're going to be recording this as well for my YouTube channel. So you'll see me kind of perhaps going through a couple of takes here or there. So this will be kind of a behind the scenes look at stuff. And if you have questions, you can certainly ask them in the chat area, and I'll answer those questions as we roll along here. So what I'm going to do first, though, is just shoot an introduction, and then we'll get into everything. And I'll do my best to monitor the live chat on both places. And don't be shy. Leave a hello, and we'll get to it. So let me hit my record button here real quick, and we'll begin the recording, and then we'll get into it. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at having a multiple Nintendo Switch household. I bought my wife and the kids a Nintendo Switch Lite the other day around Christmas time. And what I was hoping I'd be able to do is load up my digital games on this one, in addition to having them on my main Switch that I've had for the last 2.5 or 3 years, and be able to let the kids play with some stuff while I'm on the other console, perhaps. But unfortunately, this has proven itself to be a little bit more difficult than I think it should be. And what I wanted to do in this video is just kind of run through some scenarios to consider if you are looking at buying an additional Switch console for your household. Unfortunately, again, it's not as easy as you might think it should be. And we'll look at some ways that you can kind of circumvent some of the restrictions that Nintendo has put into place when you do want to have more than one Switch device in the household. Now, I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for both Switches here with my own funds. All of the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Nobody is paying for this video, nor is anyone reviewing it or approving it before it gets uploaded. So let's get into it now, beginning with having one Switch console and how users work on it, and then we'll see what happens when you bring in the second one into the mix. All right, so that's our first take. So we're just going to save this on the hard drive here. And if you are joining us on Amazon, we're shooting a video live as we discuss this topic. And I will do my best to keep up with the chat comments on the Amazon side and on YouTube. So let's get this clip logged here, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. So what we're going to do next now is just look at how you can manage users on a single Switch console. This is what I've been doing now since I got my Switch. And the spoiler alert with this video is that you're best off buying games on cartridge, because these games do not have the restrictions the digital versions have. So if you own a cartridge game, you can have one cartridge on one Switch and another cartridge on the other Switch, and you won't have any issues pop up. But if you have them digitally, that creates some issues there. So that is the game plan there. Okay, so we're going to go pick it up here on this camera, and we'll get into how the Switch works. Actually, I think I'm going to go over to my my Switch interface here and talk about users here. Or, you know what, let's talk about the consoles first, and then we'll get into the rest of it. All right, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. So first of all, let's look at the differences between the two Switch consoles. This smaller one here, the yellow one, is the Switch Lite. This sells for about $199. And the larger device here is the original Nintendo Switch console. I have an aftermarket game controller here attached to the side that adds a proper D-pad to the Nintendo Switch. And there's a couple of key differences between them beyond their size. So the first big thing is that The larger, more expensive Switch can connect to a television, so you can use it like a regular game console in addition to having it work handheld. This one is handheld only. Another big difference here is that the controllers don't detach on the Switch Lite. It is an all self-contained unit here, whereas on the other Switch here you can pop off these Joy-Cons and use them as individual controllers if you want on a few games that support that. The screen resolution is the same on both, about 720p, but because the display is smaller here on the Switch Lite, to my eyes it looks a little bit sharper than the larger unit here. But really the big differences here are the fact that you can't detach the controllers and you can't use this on a TV even though it has the USB-C port. Now let's hop over to my existing console here and take a look at how I have the users set up, and then we'll get into some of the options that you'll have when you bring the second Switch into the mix. All right, so let me just save this real quick, and I will try to answer some questions here on the chat. Flood of Sins is disappointed that I didn't have a AMD chip added to my new gaming laptop. You know what's interesting is that there are not many, I might be wrong about this, but as far as like the mainstream manufacturers, I don't see a lot of AMD parts on a lot of these gaming laptops right now. But you will be pleased to hear that we have at least 2 low-cost Ryzen laptops on the way, one from Asus and one from HP. And I'll probably get one from Lenovo also. So we're going to be doing a whole bunch of videos on those lower-cost Ryzen devices. So definitely worth checking out. All right, so we're going to go pick it up here on this camera, which is my Switch view, and we're going to continue here. Dennis Black wants to know any preference on which video chat we use. It'd be great if you could go over to the Amazon chat to ask questions, just because there's less volume in there and I might see it better, and it certainly will help us to have folks on Amazon tuning in as we're kind of pioneering their new live stream platform as an influencer. So yeah, and Jotaku says Ghostbusters is a great game. Yeah, I just started playing this again. I had it on my 360 and I just never had a lot of time to play it, but having it handheld is great. I just wish there was more save positions, because you're often like having to get through a lot of stuff to get your progress saved on the game. All right, so we're going to go over to pick it up on here. So I'm going to say 3, 2, 1. So right now we're on the home screen of my main Switch console, and if you look up top here, we've got 3 users on this device. And what's nice about how the single console works is that I can jump over here to the settings and add additional users to my Switch who can use all of the games that I've purchased digitally and physically, and they can have their save games saved under that profile. So for example here, if I want to add my daughter Ellie to the mix, I can find a little character here to associate her with, and then type in her name. And then once I save and create this profile, she has the ability to run games kind of in her own space. And if she is playing Zelda or something like that, she can have that save state assigned to her username, and it won't interfere with what my other daughter is doing or what I'm doing. And this is great because, again, you can have all these different users on here, and this will work with the digital games too. In fact, when you go to load up a game here, it will ask us which user is going to play that game, and it will then load up the save files that that user created, and nobody is interfering with anybody else. That's great. The problem, though, is that when you want to bring the second Switch console into the mix, you start getting a lot of complexity, especially when you have multiple users on the first Switch console that you set up. Let's take a look at some of the problems that you'll encounter. Okay, so let's go add this to the mix here. And Alvajoy is here. Welcome. And I'm just trying to plot this out in my head as to how to best get this thing to make sense. All right, so we've covered now kind of the basics. I may just watch all this stuff after the stream to just make sure I got everything I'm looking for. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about what happens when you have the second console. And I think what I'm going to do to illustrate this is jump into the e-store here, and I'll show you what I'm looking at in a second, because you have to declare when you add the second console which one is the primary one that will be on your account. And this is where it gets really tricky. So I'm just going to look for one thing on this screen here. All right. Okay. Here we go. So we're going to pick it up from here, and then we'll jump back and explain exactly what's going on here. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. So when you add in a second console to the mix, this is where, let me start this one more time, 3, 2, 1. So now when you have 2 or more consoles on your Nintendo account, one of them has to be called the primary console. And what I've done is assigned my larger Switch here as the primary. And this means that whenever I load up a game, this one will have all of the licensing stored locally on it. Now, this one is not a primary. This is one of my secondary consoles. And if I switch it on here and jump into wanting to play a game, for example, let's say we want to load up Virtua Racing. What will happen here is it will have to go out on the internet and validate that I can run this game right now. This one won't need to do that verification because it's the primary one, but because this one is the secondary, it will always need to go online before it loads up any digital game. The other issue that I ran into when setting up the secondary console is that all of the extra users, like my daughter's one I just created on the main console, those will not travel over to the secondary console. So the main user is the only one that you can add to the second console. All the other users you created will not have access to anything other than the primary. And this gets really complicated, especially when you're talking about digital games, because all of these games here were purchased by my account on the main console, and even though the main console's users can play all those games, this device will only let me play the games if I'm logged in as the primary user. And as a result of that, my daughters will not have their own save games because everything has to be under my account on the secondary device. Hopefully that makes sense, everybody. I'd love to hear some feedback on that because that was like the biggest letdown right out of the gate here, was the fact that all of the save games that my daughter had put together on her Lego game could not carry over now to the Lite, which was a real issue. Okay, now here's the fun part, because let's go and do our 2-up screen here. I'm just going to get my Switch to load up a game in a second here. So we're going to get Virtua Racing running here on the Lite console. So you see the game running. Now watch what happens when we go and load up a game here. It's going to be very evident here in a second. All right, so we've got the game running here. All right, so we're going to pick it up here now on this thing, and we'll show you what happens. 3, 2, 1. Let's see, I just want to make sure I got my notes here. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Now, another thing that you'll encounter when you have a secondary console set up is that it will not allow any two, actually, let me start this again, 3, 2, 1. Now, when you have a secondary console set up, it will only allow you to run one digital game on your account, and that means if you've got a game running, for example, here on my Switch Lite, it will stop running even if I load a different digital game up. So I'm going to load up Ghostbusters here. This was a game I bought digitally on my main Switch, and once this game boots, what's going to happen here is it's going to disable what I'm playing digitally on the other console. It sometimes might take it a second or two for that to happen, but as you'll see here in a second, once we get through some of the warning screens here on Ghostbusters, once that game kicks in, this console is basically going to knock me back out to the main menu. There you go. So now we've got the message up here saying that play is being suspended because downloaded software or downloaded content is being played on another console using the same account. And this thing really drove me crazy because my assumption was that it would probably do this if it was the same game on both consoles. That would make sense to me. But no, it is any downloaded game will have this occur. So if I've got one kid playing a digital game on this one, and another kid trying to play a digital game on the other one, the secondary console will be knocked off until the game is closed on the other device. But there are ways to work around this. Let's look at a couple of scenarios. All right, so there we go. So you can see immediately, like, what happens here is that you get this message up here that says play is suspended, and it's any digital game. It's not just the one that you're playing. So that was a troublesome development, and I think they could easily rectify that. But at the moment, that's not how it works. So we're going to go call this digital issue. Now, if you have physical games, this is not a problem because you have a cartridge, you put it in the console, and it works. I think the best thing, and we'll talk about this a little later in the video, the best way to go is to buy the games physically if you can, because this will make it a lot easier, especially if you've got kids. Hartman's Chili says airplane mode. Yes, so that is one workaround, and we're going to explore two different ways to get around this issue. So the first workaround we're going to play with here is placing the primary console in airplane mode so it can't lock the games. And I have to detach it here from my dock, and we'll have to get another stand here set up so you can see what I'm working on. And what will happen with this is we will be able to get the game to load because I'm just going to close out the game here real quick. So let's close Ghostbusters. Because what will happen here is that it won't be able to go online and lock the game out, and that will give you the ability to kind of make this work in a different way. So we're going to get my other switch set up here, and I think what I might do is zoom in on the screen a little bit more just so people can see what we're doing. And I'm probably going to rework my 2-up view also. And we'll do that. Oops, by the way, what the controller that I love to use on my Switch is this one here. This is the SN30 Pro Plus. Now, in full disclosure, 8-Bit Doe, who makes this controller, sent this to me for review a while back, free of charge. But this has become like my go-to game controller for everything. It is compatible with the Switch, with the PC. You can use it with your Android phone. They got a little clip that goes on it. It's great. It's really good stuff, and it works great with the Switch. The D-pad is excellent, especially for playing Tetris 99 and stuff, because as you all know, you often run into trouble with Tetris 99 on the Pro controller. All right, so what I'm going to do now is just give you our 2-up view here, and we're going to switch to camera 2, and I'm just going to get a better view of what we're looking at here so you can all see what we're going to experiment with. So now that it is off the network, or off the dock, we can put it into airplane mode. So let me just see where I left off on the last. Okay, so we're going to go back here, and we'll kind of go from there. All right, so let us pick it up from here, and we'll look at one of the workarounds that you have. All right, oops. 3, 2, 1. I think it's a little washed out, isn't it? Let's get that. My cameras don't do well with white screens like this. So I think I'm just going to turn it down slightly here. That should work. Okay. And then we can have these two things together. I'm just going to close out the game on the light here as well. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Now the first workaround involves the primary console, and what it involves is putting the primary console into airplane mode, which we're going to do right now. You can hold down the home button and then you can go over to airplane mode and activate it. Now this will take the primary console off the network, But in doing this, we'll be able to load the games without having any of that locking code sent out. So if I load up Ghostbusters here again, it won't need to go out to the internet to validate everything because the primary console doesn't need to do that. And when we switch back here to our Switch Lite, let's load up maybe Sonic the Hedgehog after the Ghostbusters game gets loaded again. We'll be able to play Sonic the Hedgehog here because the primary console has been placed into airplane mode. So let's wait for that to load up. There we go. And now we'll load up Sonic Mania here on the other one. Now again, it's going out to the internet to make sure that it can load things up, but because this one's in airplane mode and didn't send over its lock, you're able to get two digital games here running simultaneously without that message that we had before. So that's one way to work around this issue. But of course, if you're going on an airplane or something, this is probably going to still be problematic because this console still needs to check licensing to make sure it's able to run that digital game. Now, there's another way that you can be able to run two games at once involving airplane mode on a different console. Let's take a look at that. All right, so that's scenario one. Scenario two now is that we can activate airplane mode on the console here once the game is loaded. So that's something to work with. All right, so let's take a look at that real quick. Anthony Guerrero is saying hi on the Amazon side. So let me just do this on this one here. So this is going to be Switch airplane mode host. All right, so the next one is going to involve airplane mode on the other console. And what I think I want to do here is put this one, I'm going to turn airplane mode off on here. So let's go back out to the home screen. But you can see immediately here, like this is a lot of work for a family to deal with, especially if you're buying digital. So, and Adrian, yes, we're going to cover the cartridge stuff in a minute because that's, Adrian says, what about the cartridge games? Yeah, this should not be an issue with the cartridge games at all because you'll have that ability to do that. Okay, so we're going to close that out. All right, so now what we'll do is we'll get this one out of airplane mode. And we'll jump back out and we'll kind of demo how you can make it work the other way there. Okay, so that is ready to go. And we'll click on there. So Tom Selleck, hey, Tom Selleck is here. How about that? It doesn't have a CRT. Yes, so we do cover a lot of retro stuff here on the channel. And actually, I think what we'll probably be doing in an upcoming live stream later this week is taking out the Mister again, and we'll start putting together some stuff on that. So we'll definitely be coming back to the retro topics for sure. Okay, so scenario two now is a scenario where we have the game loaded on the console, and then we switch it into airplane mode after the game is loaded. And that will be one way to work around the issue. So we'll begin with both devices here in Wi-Fi mode. 3, 2, 1. All right, so the next scenario is, start again, 3, 2, 1. So now the next scenario is looking at how we can, 3, 2, 1. So the next scenario involves putting the secondary device into airplane mode before a game is loaded on the primary one. So right now I've got both of these machines reconnected to the network and to the internet. What I'm going to do here before we load a game up on the primary console is load a game on the secondary one. So we'll load up Sonic the Hedgehog here again. Now remember, it's got to go out and look to make sure that game can be played. It's validated that we can load the game up, so we'll see it starting to load here and get going. Now what I'm going to do is hold down the home button here and put the secondary console into airplane mode. And this will run for a while like this. I'm not sure exactly how long, but you should be able to run the game for a decent amount of time before it decides to check again. And now that we have this one off the network, if I load up another digital game here, what you'll see is that things will be working on both without the other one getting knocked off the network. And the reason is that this one isn't on the network to receive the signal to lock the game, and that's how we're able to make all of that work here. But remember, this console still needs an internet connection to load digital games. And that is, of course, going to create an issue if you're traveling and in an area where you don't have internet access to check that license on the secondary device. Now, there are some ways to work around this. What you can do is go back into the eStore screen that we were on before. And if you deregister the primary device from the eStore and then register your secondary device as the primary, then you don't need the internet connection to connect on the portable one. But again, if you are traveling with both consoles, one of them is going to need an internet connection to get the game started. And that, of course, is going to present some issues for families. So what's the solution to this, given how complicated this is really to get these games validated and running? The solution really is quite simple, which is to go out and buy physical games instead of the digital ones. Most of the Switch titles are available physically. Some of the games, though, are not, and you might have to look around at limited run games and a few other companies now that are making physical versions of what were initially only digital games. So your library might be a little bit more limited, but if you are running a multi-Switch household, you're going to have a lot more flexibility with the physical games. Let's take a look and see how they work. All right. Is this making sense to everybody? I'd love to hear your feedback on this, because it has been very confusing for my family to figure out how to get all this stuff working. And I'm glad that I typically buy the games physically just because I like having the flexibility of being able to sell a game if I'm done playing with it. I don't mind having a collection, but I don't really need a collection of a lot of games. And some games I buy and I'm not crazy about, so it's nice to be able to go ahead and sell them if I can. So that's part of why I do that. And actually here on Amazon, you can trade your games in and get credit back to buy something new, and that's often very useful. One thing that's great about the Nintendo games is that they tend to hold their value quite well. So that's another reason maybe to look at these, because even, I think if you go back and look at like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which came out when the console launched, that game is still selling, I believe, for the full price or close to it. So it's they tend to hold on to the value pretty decently. And so if you're able to find a physical version, I think that's the way to go. So what we're going to do now is just kind of reset the scene here, and we'll pick it back up with an example of the cartridge stuff. All right, so the scenario now will be loading a cartridge game on both of these, I think. Actually, what we'll do is we'll load a cartridge game first on the primary console here, and then we'll just show. I don't think it's really necessary. Maybe we'll show it. So I have Mario Kart here loaded up. A lot of folks in the chat here are saying that first-party games have high values. Dennis here says that the whole thing is really confusing and ridiculous. Yeah, it is kind of crazy. I mean, I understand like the need to have DRM and licensing. I think it would work better if they locked them on a game-by-game basis. In other words, if I'm playing VR racing on this one, I should be able to load up Lego on the other one because they're two different games, right? That would make a lot more sense. And I understand they want to move software sales and everything else, but the problem is that if you're trying to like consolidate the family's activities, which you can do with one console, you can't do it with multiple consoles, and that part's kind of tricky. So we're going to move now into the physical media. So we got both of them back on the network, I believe. Let's put this one back out of airplane mode. Okay, there we go. All right. And then we'll kind of load up Mario Kart, and that should work a little bit better here. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, so our next scenario here is that we've got a physical game that we're going to load up on the primary device. I've got Mario Kart here. We're just going to put that cartridge back in. and we'll load the game up, and then we'll load a digital game now from the secondary console. And we shouldn't have a problem now because we are not playing a digital game on my primary console, and that should not create a locking scenario that would prevent us from loading up a digital game here. So we're going to load up Lego Worlds on my Lite console here. Again, this was a game that I purchased digitally. Again, it does still need to be on the internet though, because it has to validate that license. But because we're running a physical game here on the primary one, we won't have the lockout on the digital game. And as you can see here, both are looking to be running simultaneously. Yep, there we go. So we're not getting that issue we had a little bit earlier. Likewise, I could go out to my Lite console here and load up another physical game if I wanted to. So I could take the Zelda, this is the Link's Awakening game. I can pop that one in the top here and be able to play that as well. So let's put that in. And then we'll go back out to my home screen here. You can see that's finding itself. And the cool thing is that, let me give you a closer view here. When you run a physical game on the secondary console, you don't have to validate the license here because we have a physical copy. So you can see when I go to load that game, it's not checking first on the internet, and I could play this game without an internet connection on a plane, even though that this one is the secondary console and would normally have to check if it was playing a digital game. But again, because we're physical here, it's going to load the game up without giving us any issues. All right, there we go. So that, I think that makes sense. And then we'll also look at the save games and how that synchronizes up, because that is another area that you want to be careful about. All right, so we got the physical thing in there. Yep, B. Tababo said, can you go over the save game management? Yes, we're going to do that right now. And that's another complicated area because of how it synchronizes. So let's go over to, I'm going to see if I have on my secondary console here. Let me see what kind of save data I have. So I'm going to go up to Options. And I'm going to go to Save Cloud because I know I've got data in the cloud here. And you got to be really careful with this because you could overwrite the other one, right? So it's going to go out and check. Let's see what it finds here. And we're waiting for it to hit the online service because I know I have a save file on this game. And my fear is that we have a collision of it trying to update, right? We don't want that. All right, so let's go back to this one here. And it's got like a little icon there warning us about it. So let's take a look. And if I go to the main console, if I go to the main console and we go back to the Sonic game, let me find it on my list here, we'll see that it is backing this game up. So you see right here it says it's backed up. And if I go over to this, let's see what I get. So you can see that it was backed up on November 11th, which was the last time I played the game. And I have the automatic save backup on. And for whatever reason, the little guy here is not cooperating. So let me see what's going on with the little one here. There's always something in a live stream that doesn't work right, and today it's going to be this. And it could be that this one is downloading an update. So let me see if I can close this real quick. And I wonder if I can just stop the update. Or let's take a look and see. Because we should be able to pull down the save game from the cloud. So Eric Bazinga is here. Hello. And Andika Ramadani is here. And someone said, oh, is it on airplane mode? I don't believe so. I think I took it out of airplane mode, but let me double check because that could be a possibility. No, it is on the Wi-Fi, so we are okay there. I think what's happening here is that we are downloading this update. So I'm going to pop the cartridge out. This is probably not advisable. The updates don't get downloaded to the cartridges, but they get downloaded to your local storage and then they kind of patch in. But it looks like because it's downloading this, let me just delete it completely and see if we can. So I think the network was being occupied by that update. So let's go back in and see if we can look at the Save Data Cloud. And if this doesn't work, this is a good example of another complicating factor here. So Bailey Marin wants to know, how many games do I have? I have a good number of games. I have, physically, let's take a look. I'll show you the games that I have physically. So we have, in the console here, we've got Mario Kart. And then I have a couple that I bought over the last couple of years. Lego City Undercover, Night Trap. And I bought Night Trap because Nintendo testified to Congress and said they would never have Night Trap on their console. This was back in the 90s. And that, of course, has changed. This game actually came from Limited Run Games. So this is an example of a digital game that was sold in a very limited number physically. So there are ways to get digital games physically if you know where to find them. And you can do some searches on Amazon. I'm sure you'll find some games there, too. We have, I got Mario Deluxe. I've got Rabbids. This is a fun game. I was a big fan of XCOM. So this is XCOM, but like Mario and his pals with the rabid rabbits. And I just got the DLC that they had on a sale. And that's another area. Like if you buy DLC for a physical game, you're going to have those digital restrictions with the physical game installed. So this is the kind of complexity that you run into with these multi-game deals. I'm going to have to I'm going to have to improvise on this, by the way, because this thing is still just hanging out. I'm not getting anywhere with it. So we'll come back to that in a second. What else I got? I got Mario Party. I'm not crazy about Mario Party. I've been playing it a little bit with my daughter. It's just not doing it for me. Mario Odyssey, great game. And you can beat it. You know, it's not impossible, and it was a lot of fun to kind of work through all the levels are so great. They're so varied and different, so that's been a lot of fun. Zelda Breath of the Wild is a masterpiece. I put a lot of time. I don't play a lot of these games that require a lot of time investment. But Breath of the Wild you have to get this game. It's just remarkable. And if you're a fan of the original, it's got those elements there, which is great. Civilization 6 is pretty good on the Switch. It's portable. I kind of prefer it on the iPad just because you have a larger screen and the interface is a little bit easier to navigate. Incidentally, Civilization 6 does not save games to the Nintendo Cloud. Ubisoft has their own cloud save, which you don't need to pay a monthly fee for, so there's that. But again, you have synchronization issues. Captain Toad, this is a fun puzzle game. This was a Wii U game that actually plays really well on handheld mode. I've been having fun with this. A puzzle game, great for portability. Dragon Quest Builders, that's another one I spent a lot of time on. I haven't finished it yet. Now there's a sequel, but I'll get to that one soon. A few of these I got in for review through the Amazon Vine program, including Hasbro Game Night, which is like Monopoly and a couple of other games. There's a Wheel of Fortune Jeopardy one that they sent me also, so that's been fun. I've been playing a lot of Link's Awakening here. This has been a great game. A lot of fun. Mega Man 11, impossible from this old guy here, but I'm trying to do better on that one, so it's a great Mega Man sequel. 1-2 Switch was one of the launch titles, and what's interesting about 1-2 Switch is that it's a video game where you don't often look at the screen. The screen's kind of there as a secondary thing. Luigi's Mansion 3 is another masterpiece. Like I think, first of all, it was great because I could play it with my daughter, so that one is definitely worth playing there. And then I covered these on the back as well. And then I have Mario Maker 2, which is a blast. It's fun because there's so many levels that people are creating. That's been a lot of fun to play. And then Starlink. This one was kind of a disappointment because it did require you to buy all these toys and stuff to go with it. Or you could just spend, basically you bought the game for $60, and if you bought the digital pack for pretty much the same price, you could get all the weapons. And what I didn't like about Starlink was that the game looks awesome. It's got, it's a great space shooter, and this one has like some Star Fox integrated with it as well. But there's no real progression because you can buy all the upgrades if you wanted to. It just doesn't feel like a proper space game, you know. So that was something that I kind of missed. And then on the digital side, I've got a lot more on the digital side. Not to belabor this, but let's go back to my screen here. So if we go over to my big list of all software, you can see what I've got digitally. So they had a big sale recently, so I picked up a bunch of games. The Sega Ages Virtua Racing is a great port of that classic arcade game. I'm a big fan of Sega arcade games, so whenever one goes on sale, I go for that. Super Smash Brothers I bought digitally. I had some family visiting, and we wanted to play the game like right then and there and didn't want to go shopping, so we downloaded it. Xeno Crisis, that's a fun digital game. It was actually, it's kind of like a 16-bit stick shooter. And what's cool about it is that it was written with the restrictions you would have had back then. So they had to get creative as to how to make the game work with retro restrictions assigned to it. Super Blood Hockey is a lot of fun. That one is, it reminds me a lot of the old NES hockey, but it has a franchise mode attached to it. Katamari Damacy Reroll is a remake of Katamari Damacy, the original. A lot of fun. Great game. Let's see what else we've got here. I got a few others digitally that we didn't cover there a minute ago. I have some that I haven't played yet. Saturday Morning RPG I haven't played yet. Pac-Man Championship Edition Plus, a lot of fun. Shakedown Hawaii, pretty fun too. The Messenger's another great game. Shakedown Hawaii, I think I just mentioned that. The Ace Attorney, is that his name? It's so small I can't see. Ace Attorney, The Blaster Master. There's so many, I have so many great games on here. So I have a lot to entertain myself with. But again, on the digital side, when you have a digital game, it gets a little trickier when you want to load it up off the other console. Okay, so here's what's going on with the backup. So automatic backup is currently unavailable due to a conflict between save data on this console and the save data on the server. To resolve the conflict, unify the data by selecting backup save data or download save data. If this is not the console, so it's good. They have some protection for collisions, so that is good. And let's go pick it up on me here, and we'll talk about how to synchronize stuff. Now, save games backing up need to go to the Nintendo Cloud, so you have to pay for that. Let's see what we've got here. Larry Phillips from Brooklyn, hello. Yeah, we're about 70 right now on YouTube, and we've got a bunch more on over on Amazon. Andika wants to know, what kind of micro SD card do I use for my Switch? I have a Samsung card, I think. You don't really need anything special for your Switch. I don't want to take it out right now because I'm sure there's stuff running on it. But this is a 128 gigabyte Samsung card. It was on sale. I would advise very strongly, if you are looking for SD cards for your Switch, that you stick to the name brands. So you can't go wrong with SanDisk or Sony or Samsung. I would stick to those. You could get a cheaper card, but you get what you pay for sometimes. And a lot of times, too, these game consoles are not as forgiving as a PC might be, for example. So I would look at, kind of a mid-range price SanDisk or Samsung or Sony card, and I think you'll be in good shape with those. Those tend to work. What you don't need is the Switch branded cards. So SanDisk has a bunch of cards that are branded with the Switch logo on it. Those might cost an extra $1 or $2 because of the licensing, so you don't need to go that route. The SanDisk cards without that labeling will be fine. What I would look for, though, is one of the faster cards. The basic rule of thumb here would be to look for a card that has 10 and a circle around it. Those will be adequately fast for what the Switch will be drawing from it, and I think that's probably the best way to go. All right, so I think what I want to do here, I'm just going to kind of labor my way through this because I have not experienced what I'm about to show you here yet. So we can go from there. Jotaku recommends 128 gigabyte cards, and I would totally agree with you on that. 128 gigs is the sweet spot. They're not that expensive anymore. It's crazy that you can get that much storage on a tiny little card for so little money. A 256 might be worth looking at also if you can find one at a good price. And you can swap them out. So it's not like you have that one card forever. You can, in fact, my case here actually has, I think this is an Amazon case too. My case here actually has slots for your SD card, so you can take them out and swap them out. The one thing though that you want to do is make sure you eject the card properly. You shouldn't just pop it out willy-nilly. So the best thing to do is probably to shut the console down, just power it off, take the card out, put in the other one and turn it back on again. That's really the best way to do it, because you do risk some data loss, because once you put the card in some ways this kind of works like Android stuff works, in that it kind of has everything go to the card. So when the card's in, every save game, every game you download, even though the internal memory still has some games on it, I can't put any games on the internal memory. It goes right to the SD card. So that is where you need to go. So definitely check that out. Javon says he remembers when I first started my channel. And yeah, it was a long time ago. Thank you for sticking around for all these years. I greatly appreciate it. In fact, my first day full-time was the Switch. It actually came in on my first day as a full-time content creator. So what better way to start off a full-time job than getting a brand new game console and basically for your job reviewing it. It was just an awesome way to start my first day as a full-time content creator. So that was awesome. All right, so we're going to jump now. I'm just going to see where I left off on the last clip here. So would normally have to check if it was playing a digital game, but again, because we're physical here, it's going to load the game up without giving us any issues. Okay, so we're going to talk about save games. All right, so we're going to pick it back up on me here, and then go from there. Oh, I see a question here from Dennis on the Amazon chat. He's wondering, are Switch cartridges read-only, or is it possible to have games saved to the cartridges themselves? So I believe the 3DS cartridges were read-write. My understanding on these cartridges is that they are strictly read-only. So you can't write to them. And just as I was showing you before, when we plugged the Zelda game into the other console, even though I had updated the game on this one, it had to re-download the update. So I think these are read-only right now for that. Okay. Let's go and pick it up here. And by the way, that's another argument for getting the physical games, because these games are getting big. You've got 12, 15, 20 gig games or more, 32 gigs in some cases. So even though you're downloading patches and updates onto your internal memory or your card, those updates will not be as big as the main game data will be. And that's another reason why physical sometimes is just a lot better, because you're not filling up your memory card or your internal memory as much with some of these bigger games. So that's another argument for that. All right, so we're going to talk about save game backups, and then we'll go from there. 3, 2, 1. Now, the next question you might have is whether or not you can synchronize your save games between consoles, and you can kind of do that. So first thing you have to have is a Nintendo Online account, and that account will be assigned, if you are a single user subscription, to the main user on your console. You can get a family subscription for a little bit more money. I think it's a $15 price difference. And that will allow you to connect up to 8 different accounts to one online account. So every user could back up their save game data to the cloud if you wanted to. Now I'm going to show you the Sonic the Hedgehog game here real quick that we were playing a minute ago. And I got to go into my all software thing here to find it. Because I have this game backing up to the Nintendo cloud. And if I hit the start button here and go over to Save Data Cloud, you'll see that this game has been backed up. And I can click on that, and it will bring me to the update here as to when that was last done. So this game I haven't played since November, but it successfully backed up my game to the cloud, and I can then, if I ever lost my console or whatever, I can get that save game data back. And for a long time, Nintendo didn't have this at all, so it's great now that you have the option. But the only way to back up stuff to the cloud is to have that Nintendo Online subscription. Now, what about the second console? Because I installed the game and started playing with it, but it created a new save file because it hadn't brought in the data from my cloud initially. The good news is that it does appear to have some conflict protection here, and it detected that my automatic backup is not going to work here because it did see that there was a conflict, that there was a save game file up there already. So the way that we're going to manage this here is to close this window. And what you don't want to do is back up the save data from this console right now, because this is basically a clean slate and it would erase all the progress that I had. So what I want to do here is get the data from the cloud. And you can see the cloud data here is the same as it was on the other console. Let's switch back. Remember, 11/11 at 9:23 p.m. That is the same date that I have here on this one from the cloud. So if I backed up my save data right now, it would be taking what the console generated today. We don't want that. So I'm going to download save data, and this will now bring data from the cloud to this device, and I'll have everything where I last left off. Now it's going to remind me that I'm going to be overwriting the local data. Again, a lot of protection here. We're going to click that, and it's going to download the save data. And now when I load up Sonic Mania, I'll be picking up where I left off on the other console. But you have to know this is not quite a real-time sync like you would get from Dropbox or something like that. You really do kind of have to manage this, and you will probably run into scenarios where you'll get that warning, or you might be in a scenario where it's not backing up because it's detecting a conflict, and then you've got progress on one console and progress on another one, and then you got to figure out which file you want to have as the main one. So they're doing a somewhat okay job of at least allowing you to move that save data around, but it's not doing so great in the syncing of that data automatically without you having to kind of monitor it. So there is some management here of data to make sure that your save game data is up to date on both consoles. And before you start playing a game, you're going to need to jump in and check and make sure that that save game data matches where you left off on the other device. All right, hopefully that's making sense here. This is going to be one of these videos where I'm going to probably have to watch this whole thing tonight before I go to bed to make sure that this thing's following the right flow. But hopefully, let me know if that made sense to you, because that's going to be a big area in kind of keeping track of this stuff. And I'll tell you what, at this point, I think it's great that we have the option to buy additional consoles and they sort of work. But I think they've really got to make some improvements for people just to figure this stuff out, because it's really complicated right now to manage all this. And as you saw here, there's potential for things to get mixed up if you don't do it right. And I'm glad actually that it detected that conflict, because normally you would say, oh, there's a newer file here, let's just put it over back on the server. And thankfully it didn't do that, because that could have been extremely problematic. Indika says he's from Indonesia, and he thinks the Switch game card holder might be right there somewhere, like on, oh, so maybe he's got, they're making these over there. It could be. That could be the case. All right, so I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover here. So we'll do a little outro, and then we'll just take some questions. And then once we get past 9, I'll start playing this back and just make sure it makes sense to everybody, or to me. For the recorded video, because it's so I can explain things in between takes, and sometimes it's good to just have a second look at everything. So let me just brighten this up a bit here. I think what I might do is reshoot the intro now that we've kind of gone through the whole thing. And then we'll kind of end it out over here. And we'll go from there. So let's move this around like this. And I think what I might do too is put my cartridges into the mix here as well. All right, 3, 2, 1. So there you go. It is possible to have a multiple Switch household, but unfortunately it's not that easy, especially if you've been buying up a lot of games digitally. So my advice would be, if you are looking to get a couple more Switch consoles for the house, really try as best you can to stick to the physical media. This is certainly going to be a lot easier to manage from a traveling perspective, because you won't need the internet connection on your additional Switches to play the games. You won't have the restrictions when you do have a connection of a game getting knocked off because somebody else loaded up a digital game on a different console. And of course, if you are done playing the game, you can sell it and get some of your money back to buy new games, because these games can be played on any Switch console and they're not tied to any specific user. So I am very grateful that Nintendo decided to keep making physical media on this new generation of console. And again, I strongly suggest that you should be buying games physically as best you can, just to reduce the amount of complexity here. They definitely should do some work, I think, on digital rights management. I can really, again, understand why you'd want to not allow someone to run 2 copies of a game at the same time. But I think they should allow you to be able to run 2 different games on your account at the same time. It just would make more sense to me to do that, and I think it would simplify things for families considerably. Also, I hope that they try to make the data save thing be more of a synchronization as opposed to just a backup, because it will get complex and sometimes problematic to have to manage those backups all the time, especially if you are jumping back and forth between 2 different consoles. Right now, you really got to monitor it to make sure you're not creating conflicts and to ensure that the save game you've put so much time into is making its way over to the other console when you play with it. Now, if you do have a lot of digital games and you're trying to figure out the best way to approach things, I would say that you want to have the console that you're traveling with be set up as the primary one, and that way you can load your digital games without the internet connection. Again, you can jump into the eShop and change it back and forth if you need to, but I really feel like if you're going to be spending a lot of time on the road and you've got those digital games loaded up, make sure your portable device is the primary, just so that you don't get stuck on a flight with nothing to play. But again, I do think going the physical route is probably the best way to go in a multi-Switch household. So they do have some work to do. This is complex, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section as to whether or not this all made sense or not. It's really been difficult to try to put all this together. So do let me know down there. We'll do some follow-ups as Nintendo changes things down the road. I'm sure they will. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. All right, look at that, right around 9 o'clock too. So the timing worked great on the stream. So let's take some questions. Now that I think I covered just about everything here. Yeah, I think I did do that. Okay, good. All right. And you know, one other thing I didn't mention is that if you start, so right now I've got I have a single account for the Nintendo Switch online service. And if I decided to move to the family account, I don't get credit for what I already bought. So you basically start a whole new subscription and your other one is still going. It just doesn't automatically renew. So you don't get billed twice, but I'm like 8 months in to my current cycle. And if I upgraded to the family account, I'm paying full price again, and I don't get any credit for what I had left on the other account. So that's another thing to keep in mind. All right. Let's see what we've got here. And Larry, yes, I mean 9 p.m., that's right. Vivian S. says, share online between 2 consoles. Yes, we just covered that a few minutes ago. So you can share the save games, but you really got to manage it. That's a big thing there. Jotaku wants to know, did I know that Retro Fighters released a USB version of the Brawler 64 controller? I did not know that. I'll have to take a look at that. Do me a favor, email me a link to those. I always like reviewing game controllers, so I'd love to get that in there. This is my favorite controller right now. I use this works on my Mister also. So like this is the controller I use for everything now, just because it's so compatible. You do have to switch modes on it, but it works. And the other controller, the other one that I bought here is this Hori Joy-Con. And I prefer the D-pad on this to the standard Joy-Con from Nintendo. It doesn't work when it's detached though, so when you pull it off here, it won't work on its own. There's no rumble on it. But I found that you have the rumble on the other one, it just works fine. And the price on this, $25. So super affordable. So definitely worth taking a look at. Pork Chop Express. Never had the Joy-Con drift, but do you think they will do it? Yeah, so I've heard a lot of people saying that they've been experiencing drift on their Joy-Cons. I have not had that problem with mine. It appears as though Nintendo's been fixing them as they've come in for repair, but this is long out of warranty, so I don't know what'll happen if I do start to get the drift. I certainly play a lot on my Switch, and this is like the original version. I bought this like the day this came in on release day, so I was lucky enough to get one on release day. And surprisingly, I haven't had any problems with it. So I don't know how widespread it is. Maybe I don't play as much on my Switch as other people do, where the Joy-Con drift becomes an issue. You know, it's funny when we talk about drift. My Apple II used to get drift all the time on its joysticks. I went through a lot of Apple II joysticks back in the 80s because of that. Jovan says, wants to know what controller. So this is the 8BitDo SN30 Pro Plus. This one is called the Hori D-pad controller. And they have a couple of different designs. They don't unfortunately have one that just matches the regular solid color. So they have this is the Mario one, which I found to be the least crazy looking. And I think it was also the least expensive. And they've got another one with a Zelda design on it. And I think there's a Pokemon edition as well. So if you click on the Amazon link, you can see that on there. Vivian wants to know if this works on the iPad Pro. This doesn't, although, and we talked about this on the chat the other night. Apparently, if you go into the accessibility settings, you can get it working on there. So I'll have to play with that at some point. Alberto de Silva, with the new player, which is in beta, I believe it works with no issues with the subs. Oh, he's talking about the Plex thing. I am not sure about that. I have to go and look at some of that stuff. I'm getting ready to do my next Plex video, so we'll take a look at that. Bailey wants to know if I can add him on Switch. Yeah, add me. If you can look me up. I think I'm just under my name, LONSEIDMAN. So you can become a friend of mine on there for sure. You guys can all, and gals, can all sign up and do that. So yeah, so this was a fun little excursion. And hopefully this video will be something that makes sense to people. I'm going to play back I'm just going to play back some stuff here just to see how this came together here. Just give me 1 second. I'm just confirming that we are no longer on Amazon. Yep, so we are off the homepage. We are still streaming on Amazon, so you can still watch me there. And I've got links up right now for the Hori controller and the 8BitDo if you want to find those. But I just want to play back a couple of these clips here just to make sure that this is making sense. So let's go and load the intro. I may reshoot the intro. 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at having a multiple Nintendo Switch household. I bought my wife and the kids a Nintendo Switch Lite the other day around Christmas time. And what I was hoping I'd be able to do is load up my digital games on this one, in addition to having them on my main Switch that I've had for the last 2.5 or 3 years, and be able to let the kids play with some stuff while I'm on the other console, perhaps. But unfortunately, this has proven itself to be a little bit more difficult than I think it should be. And what I wanted to do in this video is just kind of run through some scenarios to consider if you are looking at buying an additional Switch console for your household. Unfortunately, again, it's not as easy as you might think it should be. And we'll look at some ways that you can kind of circumvent some of the restrictions that Nintendo has put into place when you do want to have more than one Switch device in the household. Now, I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for both Switches here with my own funds, and how users work on it, and then we'll see what happens when you bring in the second one into the mix. 3, 2, 1. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. So first of all, let's look at the differences between the two Switch consoles. This smaller one here, the yellow one, is the Switch Lite. This sells for about $199. And the larger device here is the original Nintendo Switch console. I have an aftermarket game controller here attached to the side that adds a proper D-pad to the Nintendo Switch. And there's a couple of key differences between them beyond their size. So the first big thing is that the larger, more expensive Switch can connect to a television. So you can use it like a regular game console in addition to having it work handheld. This one is handheld only. Another big difference here is that the controllers don't detach on the Switch Lite. It is an all self-contained unit here, whereas on the other Switch here you can pop off these Joy-Cons and use them as individual controllers if you want on a few games that support that. The screen resolution is the same on both, about 720p. But because the display is smaller here on the Switch Lite, to my eyes it looks a little bit sharper than the larger unit here. But really the big differences here are the fact that you can't detach the controllers and you can't use this on a TV even though it has the USB-C port. Now let's hop over to my existing console here and take a look at how I have the users set up, and then we'll get into some of the options that you'll have when you bring the second Switch into the mix. 3, 2, 1. And I'm just playing back. I just want to make sure that I've got a good flow to this video, so I'm just going to play back a few of these things to make sure that it's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm trying to avoid having to do reshoots tomorrow, so bear with me here. I'm just going to play back a few things. And if you came into the stream late, you can see what you missed, so give me a minute here. So right now we're on the home screen of my main Switch console, and if you look up top here, we've got 3 users on this device. And what's nice about how the single console works is that I can jump over here to the settings and add additional users to my Switch who can use all of the games that I've... Oh, and by the way, on the battery life, so it was true that this had better battery life than the bigger one, but they recently revved the hardware on the big ones. So now I think the battery life is more in line between the two, because this one has the updated X1 chip from NVIDIA, which is also in the new NVIDIA Shield, which consumes a lot less power. But now if you buy a new Switch big one, you get that same chip and much better battery life. So that's the big, that has been made better, I believe. Let me play back the purchased digitally and physically, and they can have their save games saved under that profile. So for example here, if I want to add my daughter Ellie to the mix, I can find a little character here to associate her with, and then type in her name and look at some of the problems that you'll encounter. The problem, though, is that when you want to bring the second Switch console into the mix, you start getting a lot of complexity, especially when you have multiple users on the first Switch console that you set up. Let's take a look at some of the problems that you'll encounter. Start this one more time. 3, 2, 1. So now when you have 2 or more consoles on your Nintendo account, one of them has to be called the primary console. And what I've done is assigned my larger Switch here as the primary. And this means that whenever I load up a game, this one will have all of the licensing stored locally on it. Now, this one is not a primary. This is one of my secondary consoles. And if I switch it on here and jump into wanting to play a game, for example, let's say we want to load up Virtua Racing. What will happen here is it will have to go out on the internet and validate that I can run this game right now. This one won't need to do that verification because it's the primary one, but because this one is the secondary, it will always need to go online before it loads up any digital game. The other issue that I ran into when setting up the secondary console is that all of the extra users, like my daughter's one I just created on the main console, those will not travel over to the secondary console. So the main user is the only one that you can add to the second console. All the other users you created will not have access to anything other than the primary. And this gets really complicated, especially when you're talking about digital games, because all of these games here were purchased by my account on the main console, and even though the main console's users can play all those games, this device will only let me play the games if I'm logged in as the primary user. And as a result of that, my daughters will not have their own save games because everything has to be under my account on the secondary device. See, that's the one. I'm going to play that back one more time because that's the one spot that I think might confuse people. The whole thing is confusing, but that's one area. Let me play this one more time. So I think I was good here. Let me pull this back up here. Sorry, folks. Look at that. Look at that. Now, that is a winning screenshot. When setting up the secondary console is that all of the extra users, like my daughter's one I just created on the main console, those will not travel over to the secondary console. So the main user is the only one that you can add to the second console. All the other users you created will not have access to anything other than the primary. And this gets really complicated, especially when you're talking about digital games, because all of these games here were purchased by my account on the main console, and even though the main console's users can play all those games, this device will only let me play the games if I'm logged in as the primary user. And as a result of that, my daughters will not have their own save games because everything has to be under my account on the secondary device. All right. I think that works. What do you all think about that? Leave me some comments on that. I think does that make sense to everybody? So the deal is that this is what I was trying to get across. On this one, I can load, so let's say I have virtual racing here that I purchased digitally. On this one, any one of these users can play this game. But on this one, only the Lon user can play. So that means that on this one, Kira, Melissa, and Ellie can each have their own save game. On this one, they can't, because it's only going to be under one thing. So I think that makes sense. All right, so let's move on to the next clip. Again, 3, 2, 1. I think this is now, when you have a secondary console set up, it will only allow you to run one digital game on your account. And that means if you've got a game running, for example, here on my Switch Lite, it will stop running even if I load a different digital game up. So I'm going to load up Ghostbusters here. This was a game I bought digitally on my main Switch. And once this game boots, what's going to happen here is it's going to disable what I'm playing digitally on the other console. It sometimes might take it a second or two for that to happen, but as you'll see here in a second, once we get through some of the warning screens here on Ghostbusters, once that game kicks in, this console is basically going to knock me back out to the main menu. There you go. So now we've got the message up here saying that play is being suspended because downloaded software or downloaded content is being played on another console using the same account. And this thing really drove me crazy because my assumption was that it would probably do this if it was the same game on both consoles. That would make sense to me. But no, it is any downloaded game will have this occur. So if I've got one kid playing a digital game on this one, and another kid trying to play a digital game on the other one, the secondary console will be knocked off until the game is closed on the other device. But there are ways to work around this. Let's look at a couple of scenarios. 3, 2, 1. Now, the first workaround involves the primary console, and what it involves is putting the primary console into airplane mode, which we're going to do right now. You can hold down the home button, and then you can go over to airplane mode and activate it. Now, this will take the primary console off the network, but in doing this, we'll be able to load the games without having any of that locking code sent out. So if I load up Ghostbusters here again, it won't need to go out to the internet to validate everything because the primary console doesn't need to do that. And when we switch back here to our Switch Lite, let's load up maybe Sonic the Hedgehog after the Ghostbusters game gets loaded again. We'll be able to play Sonic the Hedgehog here because the primary console has been placed into airplane mode. So let's wait for that to load up. There we go. And now we'll load up Sonic Mania here on the other one. Now again, it's going out to the internet to make sure that it can load things up, but because this one's in airplane mode and didn't send over its lock, you're able to get two digital games here running simultaneously without that message that we had before. So that's one way to work around this issue. But of course, if you're going on an airplane or something, this is probably going to still be problematic because this console still needs to check licensing to make sure it's able to run that digital game. Now, there's another way that you can be able to run two games at once involving airplane mode on a different console. Let's take a look at that. 3, 2, 1. So the next scenario involves putting the secondary device into airplane mode before a game is loaded on the primary one. So right now I've got both of these machines reconnected to the network and to the internet. What I'm going to do here before we load a game up on the primary console is load a game on the secondary one. So we'll load up Sonic the Hedgehog here again. Now remember, it's got to go out and look to make sure that game can be played. It's validated that we can load the game up, so we'll see it starting to load here and get going. Now what I'm going to do is hold down the home button here and put the secondary console into airplane mode. And this will run for a while like this. I'm not sure exactly how long, but you should be able to run the game for a decent amount of time before it decides to check again. And now that we have this one off the network, if I load up another digital game here, what you'll see is that things will be working on both without the other one getting knocked off the network. And the reason is that this one isn't on the network to receive the signal to lock the game. And that's how we're able to make all of that work here. But remember, this console still needs an internet connection to load digital games. And that is, of course, going to create an issue if you're traveling and in an area where you don't have internet access to check that license on the secondary device. Now, there are some ways to work around this. What you can do is go back into the eStore screen that we were on before. And if you deregister the primary device from the eStore and then register your secondary device as the primary, then you don't need the internet connection to connect on the portable one. But again, if you are traveling with both consoles, one of them is going to need an internet connection to get the game started. And that, of course, is going to present some issues for families. So what's the solution to this, given how complicated this is really to get these games validated and running? The solution really is quite simple, which is to go out and buy physical games instead of the digital ones. Most of the Switch titles are available physically. Some of the games, though, are not, and you might have to look around at limited run games and a few other companies now that are making physical versions of what were initially only digital games. So your library might be a little bit more limited, but if you are running a multi-Switch household, you're going to have a lot more flexibility with the physical games. Let's take 3, 2, 1. All right, so our next scenario here is that we've got a physical game that we're going to load up on the primary device. I've got Mario Kart here. We're just going to put that cartridge back in, and we'll load the game up, and then we'll load a digital game now from the secondary console. And we shouldn't have a problem now because we are not playing a digital game on my primary console, and that should not create a locking scenario that would prevent us from loading up a digital game here. So we're going to load up Lego Worlds on my Lite console here. Again, this was a game that I purchased digitally. Again, it does still need to be on the internet, though, because it has to validate that license. But because we're running, I think we're good top here and be able to play that as well. So let's put that in, and then we'll go back out to my home screen here. You can see that's finding itself. And the cool thing is that, let me give you a closer view here. When you run a physical game on the secondary console, you don't have to validate the license here because we have a physical copy. So you can see when I go to load that game, it's not checking first on the internet, and I could play this game without an internet connection on a plane, even though that this one is the secondary console, would normally have to check if it was playing a digital game. But again, because we're physical here, it's going to load the game up without giving us any issues. There, 3, 2, 1. Now, the next question you might have is whether or not you can synchronize your save. Is not going to work here because it did see that there was a conflict, that there was a save game file up there already. So the way that we're going to manage this here is to close this window. And what you don't want to do is back up the save data from this. All right. I'm happy with it. I think it makes sense. So yeah, so to answer some questions here, Spectre Scully says, isn't technology supposed to get simpler, not more complicated? And I think that's exactly it. My understanding is that this is a similar experience to what you would have on the Xbox. Now, I have like a million Xboxes now. I got 3 of them, I think. I don't know why I have 3. But I think the difference here is that because these are portable, the assumption is this would be should have a little less friction. So yeah, I think the only solution that really works is the physical games. And that's what I will be, when I'm looking at games for the kids, like that's where I'm gonna go. And that's the one thing that frustrates me is that I just bought a couple of digital games that my daughter likes to play, and now it's gonna create this whole big complex mess. The other thing that I might do is upgrade to the family plan on the network thing, because then my wife can play, because my wife really just wants to play the old Nintendo games on here. That's really all she wants to do. So I'll probably, at some point, when I get closer to September, when my my other account hits the end of its annual thing, maybe I'll move it over to that. But yeah, this has been like really complicated, more than it should be. And then the comparative would be if you had like an iPhone or an Android device. I don't think Android or iOS has any kinds of restrictions like this. So I've got kid games that are running simultaneously on both kids' iPads from a game that I purchased on my account and connected to theirs via the family share thing. The family share on iOS is not perfect either, but from the standpoint of just loading up a game or loading up something that you can run simultaneously, no problem. I can just run apps on multiple devices, not a problem. This is a problem. So again, I would be okay if they would just, if it was, let's say I wanted to run Ghostbusters on both devices and it doesn't let me, that'd be okay. I got that. Because you want to have one device, one game, okay. But to have any digital game not work is crazy restrictive, especially when you can just go out and buy it physically and then run two different games at the same time. So that's what got me. So yeah, so that is the deal there. So yeah, so this was fun. It was. I'm not sure what we got for traffic on the Amazon side. I'll have to check, but it's been fun doing these streams. I've got another one coming up. Where's my calendar? Let me pull up my calendar here. So I think I'm doing this again on Friday night. So we'll be coming back with a different topic. Yeah, Friday night. So I'm doing Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I'm going to be busy. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the same time. So 8 p.m. Eastern, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And you can find me here or over on Amazon. And I have to figure out what I'm going to do for the next one. I think what I might do a little bit with the Mister, because I did get some more stuff in for the Mister. I got in a case and a USB hub. You can't buy those things on Amazon, but you can get the DE10 Nano. So I'm definitely going to do another stream with that. And I got a whole bunch of stuff here that we can do stuff with. So I just got to figure out what Friday's stream is going to be about. And then I also wanted to start working on my router and getting my VLAN set up. So I've got that Dream Machine from Unify that I can do. So I got a bunch of stuff that I can do on these live streams. So yeah, it'll be fun. And it's great too, because what's been good about this is that I'm finding as I'm creating the videos with you all watching, there are questions that come up during the course of me shooting a video that actually add a lot of value in the production. So that back and forth with you all has been really, really good. John Moshi wants to know, is the CPU in the Lite the same as the Shield Pro? Yes, it is the same chip, the same low-powered chip, or low-power consuming chip in the Switch Lite. So yep, it is the same one. So I think we'll see whenever the new Switch comes out. Mark my words, when the new Switch Pro happens, set your timer for like 6 months, and then I think we'll see the new Real Pro that will come out. So Flucum wants to know, are the child accounts tied under your main account? So sorta. So what happens is that when you create them on the primary device, they allow you to run the games that the primary user purchased unless you attach that account to a Nintendo account. When you do that, then if they don't have a license to run the game. That's my understanding. So again, another complex thing. So that is what I believe occurs. And then those accounts are local. So, and I didn't talk about this in the video because I was going to get too into the weeds, but if my daughters are playing under their save game on this console, because I don't have the family share plan, their save games don't get backed up, only mine do. So the games will be saved on here, but they're not backed up. But mine get backed up because I have the Nintendo Online account. But I could get the family account and attach their accounts to that. However, I don't believe they'll be able to play the digital games if I do that. I think that's what happens. So yeah, this is just so crazy complex. So Alberto's having some trouble with the Plex app on the NVIDIA Shield. This is what's challenging for me, and I'm not being critical of Alberto here. I just want to tell you what happens with me is that I don't experience a lot of what people are experiencing in their setup, so it's hard to say because I just used Plex the other day. It's been fine. One thing I noticed though, so I did run into this on my Shield Pro upstairs, which is the new Shield Pro. You can set up the different HDR modes in the settings, and for whatever reason, like I was not able for as for a couple hours, I was like, why is this not working? I couldn't get my 4K HDR stuff to engage, and I wasn't getting Atmos out of my Atmos content on my Plex server. And as it turned out, because I had manually set what HDR modes I wanted the Shield to support, it wasn't automatically switching into those modes in Plex. So I just set the thing back to auto, and that fixed everything. So that was something that I encountered. What he's saying is running sluggish. And Alberto, are you running the server on the Shield also, or just using it as a client? I'd be curious to know about that. And Frog Van Valhalen says, imagine if Nintendo came up with a Switch XL like the DS and the 3DS. I think they will. I think there's going to be a more powerful device. Somebody else had asked earlier about VR and whether or not they're going to get more serious with that. I don't think so. I think they're all looking at Sony, who's poured a lot of money into VR. I don't know if they're getting a return on that investment, and I talk about this all the time. In fact, I've got another video queued up already on my channel for this. The Oculus Quest, I think, is awesome, and it's selling. Like I don't know if it's selling. It's not selling at the volume Nintendo's selling these things at, but it's finally something that's beginning to work. And what needs to happen in VR is you need hardware sales, and you also need developers to be selling software. And from what I've been reading, the Oculus Quest in only 6 months has sold more software than the Rift has done in 3 years. So that's a pretty substantial development. And what you're going to see as a result of that are developers focusing on the Quest and less so on the PC. We'll see these games ported over to the PC afterwards. I'm pretty sure they're all using like standard, I think the Unreal Engine is working across all these different devices. So that could be something going on. Alberto is having some issues with, so you know what it could be, Alberto, is it could be, let me know what you're using for this. Okay, yes, all right, so I think the subtitles are what's creating an issue there. It must be having transcoding issues getting those subtitles baked in, because I think it transcodes the subtitles in. And one of the things that I've often recommended to people is to really, and this may not be doable in your scenario, but it's best to run the Plex server on a different device, because the Shield has, it's powerful, but I don't know if it's got the RAM and the processing power to be the client and the server at the same time when you start adding complexity to the mix. So not to add complexity to your life, but what I would try is just set up another Plex server in your house and see if it works better off a PC, just to test it, to see if exactly where the failure point is. And then I would also try without the subtitles as well and see if that works better, because it could be that you've got something that can't transcode easily, and that could be adding some issues to it as well. So take a look at that and see what happens. John Moshe has a solution on my HBO Go with Comcast account. Please tell me what that solution is, because I would like to get that working. I've been using Chromecast as a workaround, but that's that. And I've got like another 5 or 10 minutes before I've got to call it quits. And the reason is that I'd be on here all night. I have a cold, or I'm coming down. I'm like in that mode where I can feel it coming, and I'm trying not to get it. So we'll see what happens. And I don't get sick that often, but ever since my kids started going to school, they don't get sick, but I do. Like they bring home all these diseases, and they just have better immune systems, I guess, than I have right now. I also found that when I work myself to exhaustion, I come down with a fever like almost every time now. So that's what happened with CES when I got back. I was like down and out for 3 days, sitting on my couch up there. I did catch up on all my shows, but oh, are you all excited for Picard tomorrow? Tomorrow's the day. I am excited. So Spectre Scully says, take some vitamin C. I think I might do just that. So we'll see where we go. So let me know what you all thought of this. I think I got the point across I was trying to get across, which is buy physical media if you want to have more than one Switch. Problem solved. That will certainly do it. So Alberto's using the, okay, so he's using the beta client, and that could be an issue. Jutaku's hyped for Half-Life Alyx. Yes, I am too. And that's right, also all the Half-Life games are free digitally if you want to catch up on your Half-Life. Yeah, I'm excited about that game. And actually what's cool is I can run it on my laptop now with my Quest in Link mode. So I might play around with that when it comes out. And actually what happened was I was doing something with, I think it was Alienware a couple of years ago. And I got this, so I don't know if they still offer this, but Valve had like a promotion where you could buy every game they made, past, present, and future. And so I forgot that I had that. And then when I had popped into my Steam account, and then like Half-Life Alyx is in my library. It's like, oh my gosh, they actually meant it. So I don't know if they still offer that deal, but that was pretty exciting to have that game waiting for me there. So, okay, so yeah, Alberto, I would try, it might just be, this could be a beta issue that maybe they haven't optimized transcoding for in the Shield server for subtitles. That could be what you're experiencing there. All right. Okay, folks, I am going to probably call it quits here. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and then we're going to edit this video up. Actually, it doesn't look like I have to do too much to it. I'm going to watch it, not tonight, but I'm going to watch it again tomorrow, just to make sure I got everything covered. I'm very careful about these videos because the way the search engine works is that I get a lot of traffic from people really looking for a solution to this problem. So I want to make sure this all makes total sense. I'm going to have my wife watch it also. Not that, my wife's not dumb by any stretch, but when it comes to this stuff, she needs to be explained in a very clear way. So I'm going to have her watch it and see what she thinks. She never watches my stuff, so this will be fun to have her watch one of my things. So John says to refresh the Chrome browser after your credentials are entered on the HBO login. All right, I'm going to try to do that, John, and see if I can get it to work. Because that's been very frustrating to have, like, it's Apple TV Plus and HBO Go don't work on my Shield, and that's the only two things that I want on it right now. All right. Okay, folks, I am going to call it quits for tonight, and I will be back again. So again, we're going to be back on Friday. Friday night, same time, 8 o'clock. Hey, do me a favor. Why don't you all, in the comments section on this video, not in the chat, because I'll probably miss it, but in the comments, leave me some ideas for stream topics that you'd like to see. The ones that work best, because we're doing this on Amazon, are things that we can talk about that people can buy. So, if you've got some ideas, let me know down in the comments there. That'd be really, really helpful. So, cool. All right, so I'm going to say goodnight to the Amazon stream. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We're going to let that end here real quick. All right, so Amazon is now done. And, oh, yeah, and actually, folks, go on the Facebook group and make some suggestions there, too. And Nick F. says, same Lon time, same Lon channel. That is correct. So definitely tune in, folks. And again, I really appreciate everybody's feedback. And I will be back again Friday night. Hopefully, I will not have a cold by then. And if I do, I'll be loaded up on Dayquil. All right. Have a good night, everybody. We'll